Thank you, Mary.
I think we can call this meeting to order.
Okay.
Good evening. Ben, you want to go through the procedures for those folks who aren't online?
I sure
Yeah.
will. Planning Commission welcomes comments generally at any time. We ask that you get the attention of our chair before you contribute. Individual comments may be cut off after 3 minutes. Disruptive individuals may be required to leave the meeting, and persistent disruptions may result in the meeting being recessed and continued at a later date. We don't have anyone online meeting instructions, so Mary, that's just with the chair's attention.
We're early. Not even 6 yet.
Oh, yeah.
Barely.
Just
Running start. I'm on time.
You're on time. Okay. We're formally in session. We're in our public comment period. Mary, anything you want to share with us tonight?
Not very much. Mary Rapar Stevenson. I just want to invite you all to the library programs. We're having a ornaments class, program on the 21st. You can make Christmas ornaments. So those are really good programs. On last Saturday, we had the wreath making, and that was a lot of fun. I had so much fun making with someone. I didn't make my own. That's this week, but that's on the 21st. And then next year, if you have little ones, they might enjoy the sock gnomes program. And that fills up really fast. You do have to make a reservation for that one, but that's in January after the new year. So I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I won't see you until next year. Yay. And have a wonderful holiday season. It's a good time of year. You know, everybody likes everybody. Everybody's nicer than everybody, and then January 2nd comes.
So in the meantime,
Let's just try to carry that spirit forward. We can make it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well and stay healthy.
Thank you, Mary.
Same to you.
Yep, and we may see you, you know, you never can tell. You're around
Not if
town.
I see you first.
Yeah, I know that's the case.
Well, there's, the parade was last night.
Yeah.
Or no,
A few
Friday
nights
night
ago, yeah.
and everything. It's a good time of year.
It is. It is. Okay, well, having no further public comment. Then let's go to approving our minutes from our November 12th meeting. Folks had a chance to take a look at those.
They look fine to me. Good, I'll move approval. I'd second that.
We got a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. And minutes are approved. Basically, our new business is a topic of conversation, I think, for us is as we look ahead to meeting with the mayor. I think it's time for us to say, what is it that we want to share with the mayor and what would we like to hear from him? Just thinking about this over the last few days, and we have a comprehensive plan that sort of sets out a direction. But really, I think when you get right down to it, the direction in what the city ends up doing oftentimes comes through some initiative that the council either takes or is taken to the council and they act on and they adopt. But our work doesn't stand alone. It really needs to be integrated with those other city functions, whether it's public works or whether it's other economic development activities, whatever the functions the city and the city council are overseeing. Our activities need to be integrated into that. So I quite frankly am really curious in terms of what the council really thinks its priorities are for the next year. What are the policy issues? How might our function in terms of looking at land use fit in there? But it also gives us an opportunity, I think, to take those issues that we see as a planning commission and perhaps take those back to the city council and say, hey, we're hearing this stuff. What would you like to see perhaps on annexation policy? Or how do we mesh what's going on in terms of infrastructure, water system, with what we want to do in land use? How do we work with the city council in terms of some of the goals with regard to affordable housing? Because the planning commission can't solve those problems, but we are certainly part of the process in terms of doing that. So I just thought it'd be worthwhile to sit down and say, what is it that we'd really like to hear from the mayor, his perspective in terms of where the council's going, where it's likely to go over the next year. And what is it that we want to share with him in terms of our perspectives, what we think is important.
Yeah, I'm really glad we're doing this. A couple have suggested this, and I think it's great that we're doing it. I really most want to hear from him about his own priorities and the council's, kind of on a couple of fronts. One is, sort of big picture, if planning is about two things, what do you want to preserve and what do you want to change? I'd really be interested to hear, what are the things about Stevenson that he wants to preserve that maybe he's worried about? And then what are the things that he really sees, a need for change? And then the other particular, I guess, the two particulars I'm particularly interested in hearing from him about, or talking more with him and the council over time, is the issue of school age children in the city is significant. This elementary school's closed. This is to me an existential problem for Stevenson that we don't have enough school age kids to keep the elementary school open. So that's, I'm interested in hearing how much of his hair is on fire about that. And then another particular that's of interest to me is, we haven't talked a lot here at the Planning Commission, but maybe the city council has talked more about how are they coordinating their strategy with the port? The port's got a significant presence. They control the waterfront or a lot of it. I'd love to hear, what dialogue there is at this point between him and the council and the Port Commission about their development plans. Because it seems to me they're kind of the big dog, if you will, in terms of a public entity. And I guess finally, the last thing is, and Ben, you keep us posted on this, but what are some of the capital investments like the Overlook that the council's going to try to fund and do that would have an effect on planning? Is it parks? Is it other public works, street stuff? I'd be interested to hear. Those are kind of the topic list that was in my head, Jeff, and thinking about this. So, the big picture, what do you see that are crises and threats, and what do you see that are, positive trends? And then, what about the school issue? And then what about the port? Those were kind of my hot topics.
You just hit them all.
What else got you?
Well, the one thing that intrigued me when I was new to the planning commission was the 10-year success plan
Mm.
for the city.
Mhm.
And I'd love to know what the mayor and city council how they're figuring that into decisions that they're making.
What is the 10-year success plan?
Jeff was on board, he can tell you.
It was a series of goals that were laid out, in terms of projects and things that we wanted to accomplish in order to provide some focus. And it's one of those things, I think, that it's a great plan, but oftentimes we do those plans and they go on the shelf.
Exactly.
And, other emerging issues seem to take all the attention, and so you don't move ahead on those. But that might be a good idea to pull that 10-year plan out and take a look at
Yeah, I
it.
read it once, but it's been a while.
Was that a plan created by the planning commission? Or was it the city
The
The
council?
city, yeah.
It went through the planning commission quite a lot,
Mhm.
brought it here. And then adopted by the city council. So it was a downtown plan. Stevenson Urban and Commercial Core Economic Sustainability Strategies.
Wow,
Success.
well done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's really good if you can find it to look at. It was
It
very
is good. I
interesting to
thought it was
me.
really well
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
Is it in the city documents?
It should be, but I'll. make
I
a
looked
note
for it and
send
didn't
out
find
to
it, but-
everyone.
Okay.
Somewhere.
Yeah, it's kind
I
of,
have a copy too, if you have trouble finding one, but
It was a lot of fun in terms of looking back through and saying, what do you want the city to look like?
Mhm.
Um, And a lot of that stuff has come up as we've talked on the planning commission.
Mhm.
Some of the stuff, the overlook down here was
Mhm.
something that came out of that project, as well as out of the sort of recreational access planning that was done. So,
How long ago was it created?
We initiated it before COVID. And then adopted it in early 2023. Late 2022, something along that, so a little bit of a delay from COVID and the final adoption, but it's still fresh.
yeah, and we had a good amount of public engagement in that, number of workshops and.
Is there like a timeline that you review it every year or something like that to see?
There were good intentions to do that, and it's,
Okay.
yeah, Stewards of Success Committee, and we haven't reorganized.
Maybe
Yeah,
we could put that
yeah.
on our agenda.
Mhm.
Maybe we should do that,
Yeah.
Jeff, just
Yeah.
pick a
keep it
month
moving forward.
and say, let's open the book on that and see how we're doing. Yeah, because things become shelf studies if they're not
Yeah.
examined, and you don't want that, so,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, and likewise, is this something the mayor thinks about? Has the council forgotten?
Well,
that?
they're so busy with other things that,
We're working on the budget right now.
Yeah.
So,
But they're doing some of their own strategic planning at this point in time too.
Mhm. They have a strategic retreat in Q1 usually that helps set up
Mhm.
the rest of the year for what they do, so they haven't been doing it recently. The budgets are developed based on that strategic retreat from earlier in the year, so.
Other thoughts? August?
Yeah, I think touching base and seeing kind of where the mayor's sitting at and maybe a little glimpse into what the city council's thoughts are going forward for next year. I think as we kind of like move more out of the COVID thing and stuff, I think the downtown commercial area, which is always kind of languished a little bit, is I think gonna be one of those topics that we have to kind of readdress. And I think, the parking's part of that, but there's other elements that are maybe not making that as attractive to investors as it could be.
Mhm.
And I think there's been interest in the past on how do we kind of create, a better economic stimulus or something like that. And if they are thinking along those lines, and if they have any ideas or such.
Yeah, many of those goals in that 10-year plan for success are not things that the city can do unilaterally. They require those partnerships with landowners, business owners, the financial interests.
That's a big part because the city owns so little actually property wise, we don't have a lot of city owned park areas anymore. Parking lots, we don't have that. We just basically have street parking. And what's right here that we're looking at, it's kind of, so the city's not very land rich, unlike the port.
Unlike the port.
Who is very land rich.
Yeah, they are.
Relatively speaking, yeah, I guess that's true. What do you think we ought to be taking to the council or putting on the, things that, the council might be able to do to help us do our job better? I mean, we've put some things in abeyance because of the sewer planning, for example.
Right.
We didn't move ahead with the annexation policy, and we were looking at some of the zoning within the city too, as well. And we've put those decisions off. Is it time to sort of go back and take a look at those issues again? Are we far enough along?
Hard for me to answer that question right now with the staff turnover. What is our capacity gonna be for next year, and how much of that is gonna be training up and getting up to speed to be able to perform for you all. Plans that we have in motion are the undergrounding plan, utility undergrounding plan, long-term water supply study to understand whether we should commit to surface water or groundwater. The Public Works Department is leading that. We're partnering with the Regional Transportation Commission on a Safe Streets for All plan. It's going to identify road that will have road safety plan as a specific component of that. Cheat sheets right here. And finishing up my planning department's work on parking to get decisions to the planning commission and ultimately the city council related to parking. So
What are your color codes on there?
blue is water, green
Okay.
is sewer. The purple is other, and you want to call that
Kind of reddish, deep, whatever.
yeah, that
Berry.
wine color
Yeah, wine.
is streets.
Okay.
Having last or other funding, does that mean we have it or we're still trying to get more?
Still searching for funding.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay.
This is what we know is in the works, so most of it's in advance of our capital improvement planning process, so identifying what we have and. I've been describing it as the pig that's working its way through the anaconda, is all the sewer system things, and so it's finally working its way through. But there will be quite a bit of administrative time and to close out for the wastewater treatment plants, the collection system, and as I've described before, it's easy to look at those as two small items, but the collection system itself was 5 different projects. Sewer plant is a complete remake of that facility, so. Closeout will be significant on both of those. Cascade is a water, sewer and street project down on Cascade Avenue, so we've done the pump station at the east end of Cascade Avenue that accepts all the waste from that half of downtown and then that part of town. Brings it up into a force main about at 11th Street here, Columbia here, and then from there gravity is all the way to the next pump station, which is right next to Rock Creek Bridge. So that gravity line is undersized as it goes along the rest of Cascade Avenue and then will exceed capacity further along at some point within the planning period. So pump station is finished. We'll get the gravity line sized adequately and be able to accept new development at the port property there. That had been a barrier before, so. Sewer really drives that one, but also replacing a AC water line that's down there too, and repaving on the street. So that's a project that's in design right now. Construction ready documents should be sometime in the first quarter of 2025 and ready to go to bid and construct in the summer.
Oh, so I didn't realize that the sewer capacity issue is actually suppressed development at the port. Okay, that's just news I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that capacity, that upgrade capacity, gonna support development of that area just at the west end of town that we keep looking at, the Bryan Adams ownerships, if we were to see something happen there?
That sewer line goes through the Bryan Adams property at the west end of town. That's the area where we expect to have the capacity bottleneck next. It's not surcharging from manholes. It's not that dire as a capacity issue, but it will increase into those when it becomes a problem. I don't know. We will need to probably do some more modeling about flows before fully understanding that, but that's the next issue, next area to address as that sewer goes through. So
Yeah.
the upgrades to the plant, the capacity upgrades to the plants will accept whatever development is coming our way in the next 25 years.
On Lasher, is there sewer in under Lasher coming down from the apartments?
That's in good shape.
Is that sized for, I mean, because they put in those townhouses in there and potentially that next
Plenty of size on that.
lot, okay.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like, well, that's the bottleneck right there as it comes down and
Shouldn't be. Different factors that lead to a bottleneck are the slope and the pipe size.
Yeah.
And
well, the
so-
pipe size is what I was, if they
Yeah.
put it in just for the apartments or the residential neighborhood that was originally supposed to be there and then the apartments got put on and
No, the pipe size is kind of. Believe it's at 8 inches there. I need to go back, but that's plenty of capacity usually for anything.
Yeah.
And then you have the slope in it.
You got a heck of a slope.
Yeah. Small water components on last year. Downtown resurfacing is over overlay of Railroad Street and Seymour Street. And so that's a small little project. We'll work with the county to do that work and pay them with the state grant that we received. Potentially that project could involve addressing the stormwater issue on Ash Alley. If there's funding for that. Looking at Middle Russell. About whether it's parallel or angle parking on there to increase the capacity. So, seeing how many it could fit at different angles and what that would do to traffic safety turning movements coming in there, so. Looking at that, and then
Is the idea to take it down to one lane?
I think that would have to happen if we did angle parking.
Angle on both sides.
But yeah, that's where we get the engineers involved to pull their actual tape.
Something really radical and just back in angle parking.
Yeah.
Oh,
It works, but people don't think it.
People don't like to back up, but that's the problem with front angle parking, is
Right.
now you have to back up into stuff you can't see.
Right,
Yeah,
but backing into a parking space is
Yeah.
maybe safer than backing
It
into
would be.
traffic, but you know,
Absolutely.
people aren't used to that idea.
Yeah,
At some point, you gotta back up. Let's.
Yeah, one way or another,
Whichever
you gotta back
scenario,
up.
that's right, that's right.
Maybe give you front end on one side and back end.
Yeah, let people- let people
Let them
choose.
choose. A social experiment.
which side did you use first?
parking in the middle.
That's a great
through.
idea. That nobody's actually done that. That put Stevenson into some publication.
Yeah, not that that's the goal.
I know, but still. Yeah, I've been through the back end angle parking issue before where we had to get a very conservative city engineer to sit in the car. and say, "This is how it works." Oh, okay.
But this is interesting, Lisbon, I keep going back and saying, well, as we go through these projects or as we plan these projects in the capital improvement, but what. What does that suggest for the planning commission in terms of land use? Is it consistent with the land use designations we have out there? Is it, is it designed to support that land use designation? Is it, or does it suggest we need to look at that land use designation because the services we're providing there would support a more intensive use? So it's just, I think that dialogue, between what's going on in the capital improvement plan and what does it suggest for us as we look at the zoning and
Sure.
land use issues.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm often a conduit for that, sorry, man. When it comes to doing the big system plan, the big system looks at the water sewer plan. One of those efforts is always, growth analysis. And that's where we're pulling in what the current zoning is or what the future land use, map would allow. And making some judgments based on that, so they are drawing off of the core documents that you all deal with in the comp plan.
Yeah.
So.
Mary?
Yeah, one of the things that the city hasn't really addressed is climate change and how it's going to affect the city planning for the future. And I think the undergrounding is probably a part of that discussion because you're going to have more climate events. They're going to be harsher and more catastrophic. And especially with your electricity and wires. And I don't know if you've noticed, but PUD's been putting up higher or taller poles. And those suckers are gonna snap really good in a high windstorm. I mean, they're at least almost a third higher in some cases when you go down 14. So that's something I think needs to be addressed. To my knowledge, in the last 34 years that I've lived here, the port and the city maybe have met a total of less than 5 times to coordinate anything. And coordination with the county is almost non-existent in some ways, except perhaps for the alleged Plaza project. there could be better, because the county has the fairgrounds, which could be developed. The port has some open space down on Cascade Avenue and some other spaces. But, you know, the world doesn't stop in Stevenson. And Stevenson doesn't coordinate with North Bonneville either, and vice versa. So, but that might be something that should happen too, just for services. And the water issue, I think it will be a big one in the future. Because Lake Lavong is our water source, but that's surface water, and surface waters are receding. And so are aquifers too. So those are going to be limiting factors. I'm not sure we need to worry about having more kids. World population is way enough, thank you. So maybe we need to think of new ways. What are we going to do in a aging population? How are we going to keep the city running for those of us who are getting older? Make it more convenient, so the walkability issue and other things that an aging population means. I don't think we're going to have an influx suddenly of young people with children in our community. It's just not happening. I don't see it in our future.
Well, there are two things that have to be in place for that to happen. One is jobs and the other is the housing that young families can afford. Part of it's just demographics and turnover. I mean, the house next door to us was occupied by 2 single adults and now is occupied by mom, dad, and 3 kids. You know, that kind of turnover happens as the housing cycles, but there's not enough. I don't believe there's enough family affordable housing in Stevenson. And there are not enough family wage jobs that will allow people to pay the mortgage for those houses in the first place. So that's that's the chicken and egg problem, which is why coordination with the port is worth doing more often. Because if the port is able to create more employment or others are able to create more employment, that might start to reverse that downward spiral that we've been in lately, where more and more older residents, less and less younger ones. And so, yeah, there's a limited amount that we as a planning commission can do, or even the city council can do by policy that changes those equations. But there's, it's always, like you said, Jeff, worth looking at the plan, saying, is there anything else we can do to change those dynamics in a positive way? And I don't know the answer to that question, but it's a good one to ask.
Mhm.
I think it is too. And, by the fact that, well, you're enhancing improving or expanding the sewer capacity to the port down there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something that complements hopefully what the port is thinking about
Yeah, I hope so.
as well. But yeah, I think it really goes to show, how do we coordinate? And I think we had some of that when we were doing that 10-year plan for success. I think we had port participation in that.
That's right. I remember seeing that in the document.
They're involved in
Yeah.
that part.
But I I also think you need to break down those bridges as to, some of these agencies can be somewhat proprietary in their.
Yes, they
so
can.
let's put it that way.
Turf is a 4-letter word.
Yeah, and I think we're all better off if we can break down some of those barriers in terms of getting something done, but. I think, I think we're all here on this commission because we want a viable community. And I think, Mary, it goes back to, not just all of us gray hairs. I think we want a diverse, viable community in terms of its economic opportunities, in terms of its housing, in terms of, the educational facilities that we have. I'm concerned that as you close a school,
Big deal.
why do people with families move into a community if there isn't that school for their young kids?
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It
It
is a big
is.
deal.
But that's that question of, do you want your community to get bigger or is a smaller better? We had this discussion many years ago, And our community was aging 20 years ago. The demographics just are not going the other way.
Right.
More jobs mean more people, mean more infrastructure, mean more costs and other things. So, you have to think about those things too. Some communities stay the same size, but they become more vibrant. For example, many years ago, Julie May presented a program that we have things going on downtown every season, have a seasonal activity. And we did have at some point that rain thing, I can't remember the exact name of it. And we even got t-shirts and everything, and it was a event in April. And it was a walking event, and there were things going on in the community. And she suggested in the fall, having fire pits all over town and connecting it to all the businesses, having events. Even though it's dark and dreary out there, fire always makes people happy, and might be a little dangerous, but at least you have rain. And so, but that was never taken up. It was poo-pooed. Seasonal events. We've got our own stuff that's going on. So use the word proprietary. It is also turf too. We have our ideas and we're going to stick to them. We're going to do things the way we did them in the past. And I thought that was, her idea was really, really good. But you need some things where people will actually leave their cars and spend money downtown if you want to capture all that money going through Stevenson. And the other thing is, perhaps we need to have a reality session about what Stevenson can actually be. It is not Hood River, it is not Bingen or White Salmon. It does not have a huge downtown, and it probably never will. So if you have that as your reality, then what can you do with that reality? Now, I see the school closing as an opportunity. I've talked to Ingrid, we're on some advisory groups together. And I said, well, why don't we have night school? Why don't we have continuing education for adults? And that, just because you're gray hair doesn't mean that you're dead. You're still learning, you can still be viable in your community, volunteering, doing new things in your community. So that building is there, and it can provide a business center maybe, who knows? But I think one of the things on the reality check, in 2007, we did have a financial person from Olympia, Peggy, the sheriff's, right? Peggy,
Right.
thank you. And she brought this person here. So he evaluated every business in the community. His name was actually John Fink. I remember that. And he gave a report to the commissioners about what kind of businesses you could have in your community. And he told them, you will never have a huge business come to your community because you don't have the workers to support a big business. There were only at that point 148 people who were not disabled, who weren't too old or too young, that could actually be workers for a business. So I think we need that kind of analysis too. I mean, what kind of business, and what he recommended was investing in small, diverse businesses in our community. And he wasn't just talking about Stevenson or North Farmville, but the rest of the county too. Small, diverse businesses, mom and pop, that would employ 4 or 5 people, if that, and that would be viable in your community because of the type of community that we have. We're just not going to have something huge here. We don't have the infrastructure for it. So maybe having those kinds of discussions and reality checks might be something to consider.
I don't disagree, you know, but I think we've had some of those discussions in the past. We had those discussions when we did the comprehensive plan. There was a vision for the community. We had it when we did this 10-year plan for success. There's a vision. It's why aren't we moving ahead with those visions? Why aren't we pursuing those visions? What's keeping us from doing that? I mean, even when we were talking about some of the rezone stuff that we had looked at several years ago. And there were a lot of folks that said, "God, this is what I want. This is what I like to see in my community. You know, I want, you know, my small community. I like that atmosphere, that small town atmosphere. I don't want to have a bunch of apartment buildings in my single family residential neighborhood." I mean, there were folks that were coming out and they had a vision in terms of what they wanted to see in this community. So I think if we can work with the city in terms of what that vision is and how do we as a planning commission contribute to that? Because again, we're just a cog in that wheel.
Well, that's why this discussion with the mayor will be timely, I think.
Yeah.
Do we know yet when? Would that be the January?
Should be the January.
Okay.
Will it be after the council creates their strategic plan?
It'll be before that.
Before that, well, that's good.
I
Okay,
think it is.
Yeah, that's good.
Because
I mean-
that gives us an opportunity to provide some input up front and hopefully get some feedback
Yeah.
afterwards.
No, I think that's good.
And like, on that side of the board is their strategic priorities from last year. And so categorizing them into those 5 areas and evaluating actions based on how they advance or detract from those priorities is what we help the council look at us at. When projects come up or policies come up, we'll try to characterize it in terms of those. That community look and feel is a new one that they added last year. That wasn't on there in 2023.
Is there much definition to that? Ben?
There is.
Just what
Yeah,
those words mean?
yeah, there is.
Okay.
So there's description of what the end state
I don't know if I've
is for
seen that.
each one of those.
It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
share that, I think. That would be great, Ben.
Yeah, I think that's in our, in our area of focus, so it'd be good to know what the council meant by that.
I
Mhm.
think it'd be good if every year we had, as part of our 10-year plan for success, and we're looking at what we're doing, we can have their strategic plan, and we get a hold of that, and then we review it
Yeah.
on a yearly basis to see how we're matching up with what the city's priorities are, and then make adjustments to what we're doing and recommendations.
I like to believe that I provide you with that opportunity, but you guys are the judge on that.
Collectively,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, in our annual work planning.
Yeah.
And so this last year, I think we established parking and annexation
Mhm.
and haven't completed either one of those.
Well, it's not that we haven't done some work in those areas, Ben. You've done an awful lot of work on the parking situation.
Mhm.
And the annexation situation was one where we needed to take care of being able to provide services within the city limits
Yeah.
before we started looking in terms of what was going on outside. And that started that conversation too.
Still pending.
Yeah.
Well, I think like a lot of things. The reason that things come up is because some individual has something to gain. And so that's, why the annexation thing came up is suddenly we had somebody that wanted to
Mhm.
annex a sizable piece. And so then that discussion had to be made about what does that entail? And what are the repercussions of it? It's
Mhm.
not as easy as just saying, oh yeah, we'll just, come on in, Or we're just gonna change the zoning so that you can put an industrial center in the middle of, residential area. There's more thought that goes into the process, and I think that's what the planning commission purview is to be that kind of thoughtfulness and not putting the cart before the horse.
You felt like we were being a bit reactive and
Yeah,
not too proactive out there in terms of. trying to
Well, and
get
I
ahead
think
of some
that, I
of
mean,
these
that's
issues.
natural, that's
Yeah, yeah.
just the way that things move, is you have somebody that has an idea, they wanna, build something that's gonna result in them making money. I mean, it's always economic driven in most cases. And so then it becomes, well, how am I impaired from doing what I want to do?
Mhm.
And what can I do to change that? And some of it is, is it, I mean, it's kind of like the affordable housing. Is it zoning? People will say, oh, it's because of the zoning. And other people say, no, it's because of, that there's no capital investment, or that it's too hard to get loans for multifamily properties. And so that conversation tends to just cycle back around again, and it's like, oh, and here we are talking about affordable housing again, with no real substance to how to resolve that. So,
But I do like the idea of sort of an annual progress report on the 10-year
I think
plan.
it'd be a good idea. Yeah. Keep it in view among other things.
Yeah,
at least fresh in the frontal lobe a little bit.
Right, wouldn't hurt.
I've been in government long enough, I've seen the plans generated. And there seems to be a certain relief when a plan is approved, everyone says, boy, we got this done, it's been a lot of hard work.
And then it's put on a shelf.
Yeah, and it
Watch
becomes kind of shelf, in terms. You can't look at a plan and a planning process as an end all, it's something that has to continue. It has to have,
It's organic.
it has to be organic. But it has to have that cycle too, I think. We refer to that when we're doing natural resource processes as adaptive management, going back and saying, well, this was our hypothesis and this was the action we took to achieve what we wanted. If it didn't, why? How do we
Yeah,
improve?
what actually happened.
And I think that's workable here in this case too.
Yeah.
So, I don't know whether we want to stretch this out any longer, but if folks have got things that I think we want to put on that agenda with Scott, maybe we can get it to you.
Sure.
And I mean,
Yeah, I
we've got some ideas out here, but
Yeah.
I think, think about it. Think
Yeah.
about, as we sit here and we see the issues or the concerns we have, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll reiterate, what the points I made and put it in a note to you, so.
Okay.
I think it's a kindness to the mayor to, give them a list of, hey, here are the topics, we'd love to hear from you on, and here's some topics that we want to talk about. And so he should, hopefully it'll be a relatively informal and useful discussion, but the better we can prepare, the better.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any surprises.
Yeah, and hopefully it's helpful to him and to the council to do that regularly.
And anything to avoid what happened in the downtown a number of years ago would be good.
What was that? Yeah.
Well, first there was a restriction on new business coming in just because of the sewer and stuff like that, but also if you wanted to build something, what was it that you could build? And it became a whole thing where it went back to planning and zoning, and then, the city council just kind of used us as we need to, think about that more, and I was like, they created the situation and then kind of dumped it on us to solve.
City council put a moratorium on a particular type of development in response to that type of development proposal that had yet to be submitted, but they beat the proposal in with the moratorium and then
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
moved the.
It created,
This is history I wasn't
Yeah.
here for. So.
it created a lot of angst, let's say.
Yes. Yes.
And a lot of that was driven by the mayor.
Any other thoughts, folks?
I think we're set up. That's good. I'm
Yeah,
glad-
good discussion.
Glad we're doing it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Ben, I'd be happy to work with you too in terms of putting together, you know, sort of a little list for the
Okay,
for the mayor.
yeah, great.
Because I know Scott would appreciate it.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Where would I be able to get a hold of the 10-year?
I'll print it out. Okay.
You can send it
Okay.
out, good.
And do you have a copy of last year's city council strategic plan?
Also,
Wonderful, thank you.
It's gonna be a big group email.
Yeah, go ahead. I
Yeah.
don't think I have the strategic plan.
Yeah.
And so, and I think I have a copy of the 10-year, but it'd be easier if you send me a new one.
for sure.
All right.
You're honest.
My filing system is imperfect.
Just blame it on the move.
Yeah, there you go.
The box
Blame it on
somewhere,
credential,
yeah.
yeah.
Grandchildren.
Any other thoughts on this? Mary, anything else you want to share, anybody? Okay.
We have someone new. We have someone new.
I didn't come to make a speech or have a comment. I just, I actually came to meet Mr. Hales after the meeting, but, my name's Emily Harris and I'm part of a group called Uplift Local, which is, starting a pilot project in this area next year called Documenters, which, trains, people and then pays them a little bit, like a minimum wage, to come to public meetings like yours, take notes, and then share out through an email newsletter, like what's going on in local government. So this is the first, but probably not the last Students Planning Commission meeting I'll be at. I'm sorry I came late.
Well, welcome.
Great.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I'd love to brief you on it later. Or
Sure.
share more information.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
All right. Ben,
Okay,
we're on the old business
no old business.
and staff reports.
Staff reports, periodic update grant, that's the one that'll update our critical areas ordinance, the regulations around wetlands and fish and wildlife habitat areas, geologically hazardous areas, critical aquifer recharge areas, and frequently flooded areas. So we've completed our update for frequently flooded areas, and the focus of this will likely then be on habitat changes. I think that I've talked about this. We're gonna partner with Skamania County as much as possible on this. So try to hire one consultant to do the background analysis, and then if we can partner with them on the regulatory level too, that's the focus. If at regulatory level we need to diverge, we can diverge.
You see on the regulatory level, you're hoping to have some, you know, some consistency where we have a similar situation in the city as you have in the county.
Exactly.
We have the sort of same standards.
Yeah, we can just adopt the county's critical areas regulations wholesale. And so if there's alignment between what the city's goals are and what the county's goals are, then that would be ideal. If there is some difference in the goals, then trying to make sure that our the administrative provisions are the same, the application requirements are gonna be the same, so that the contractors or consultants that are coming in for the property owners don't have to relearn a completely new regulatory.
Yeah, it's whatever you can do. I mean, in some ways, the issues the county deals with are on a broader landscape basis. But I would hope you could be pretty consistent across them.
Yeah.
And be really helpful.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to reinvent that.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to doing that. That'll be some staff time. The grant that we have is $20,000 over 2 state fiscal years. So we have 10,000 to spend before June 30th of next year, and then there'll be another 10,000 after that. Again, majority of that, if not all of it, will go for consulting support to get the analyses done and the drafts changes done. And that puts us on schedule to adopt by our deadline of middle of 26 for adoption.
That'll be here before we know it.
Mhm.
Sounds like it's in the future, but
Sure will. I mentioned earlier the Safe Streets for All, that's Regional Transportation Commission. And a coalition of cities in the Gorge, Stevenson. White Salmon and Goldendale, maybe. I need to look at that list, but several of us in the Gorge and Regional Transportation Commission. Are working together. They've hired a consultant or are almost finished negotiating scope of work with consultant to lead that effort, and so that'll involve interaction with the city too. I don't know if it'll be a planning commission level or city council level that they'll come to, but they'll be seeking input from our community, so that the plan that they're developing for our community.
What's the goal of Safe Streets for All?
I don't know that this is a goal zero, but goal zero is a no automotive fatalities.
No
Okay.
pedestrian
type.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, I guess not just pedestrians, but yeah, right.
Yeah.
Particularly pedestrians.
yeah. So making sure that the streets have road safety plans
Mhm.
addressing high collision areas and a plan to fix that, prevent the collisions. Those plans result in both capital improvement needs, but also policy changes that affect things, so it'd be some portion of both. First Street Overlook project, it's not quite finalized, but it's open to traffic again.
Mhm.
The
Looks good.
contractors are waiting for the final bit of railing to install, so that was a field fit before they manufactured it, fabricated the railing, so I'm not sure the timeline, it's later than we had hoped, but we got the road up and going again and.
Looks really good.
sidewalks used.
No, it looks good.
Mhm.
Yeah, we
So-
just took a walk down there to see it. It's great.
Yeah, that one's part of long-term strategy, not a long-term plan, but a long-term strategy to have pleasant walking loop connecting downtown and the port, so one more project, that's Lower Russell, Cascade Avenue and the Quiet Zone, and then the Ports project along the waterfront, so one little gap then between where the sidewalk ends here, where it goes down underneath the railroad track and connects to the port property there, but that gap's usable right now for pedestrians that want to use it.
Mhm.
Big effort. That one also is the result of probably a 2018 city council strategic plan to invest in the east side of downtown. There was a sense that we were only investing in the very center of downtown and the west side, and that the east side was being neglected. And so to get over that perception and potentially inspire some kind of development or increase to the tax base over there, this project. So 6 years in the making on some of those things, the wheels churn slowly, but it is part of that strategy effort from 6 years ago. Long-term water supply study is another one that I mentioned before. Public Works Department knows that investments need to be made in either our groundwater source and how we draw water from the ground there, or our surface water source. And so to strategize which of those is the best investment to make, doing a long-term water supply study to so that the next list of projects can be identified or filtered out. There's several that are identified already, but competing priorities right now, so.
You're talking about an existing groundwater source?
Mhm.
I thought that one was a pretty limited capacity.
We've done the capacity studies and the drawdown, and it performs really well.
Doesn't.
Yeah, and so It is listed in our water rights as a backup source right now, but the impression that we have from the consultants is that it would be hard to switch that based on the analyses we've been doing.
Is there any benefit to
Source
that?
substitution, basically, is what you're saying then.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what the long-term analysis would look at. What's the
Okay.
benefit of this versus maintaining it the other way? So we'll know more, by the middle of next year, I think is the timeline for that.
Okay,
I mean, you've got water rights, you just have to find the source.
And then redundant sources, so.
Mhm.
One thing that's not on here, but inspired by our conversation today about trying to coordinate more, the Skamania County Prosecutor's Office provides probation services for, I don't know what the appropriate phrase is, for that, but when somebody needs to be on probation, the prosecutor's office provides that service. And right now, that's just a service that's provided to people who are in the court system, in the municipal court system for the city of Stevenson or North Bonneville, or within the Skamania County's court system. They're wanting to have the city support our own probation needs there, instead of just providing that as a service for us to pay for that service. So that issue came up, or the topic came up from the prosecutor. And we were able to suggest and go through, or the proposal go through, having it be a three-party interlocal agreement instead of just unilateral agreements between the prosecutor and both cities. So draft of that is ready. We're able to negotiate that and make sure that we're all in the same silo for that, instead of not knowing what the other community is doing too. So looking to coordinate more on those types of issues when we can.
Then is there any conversation going on about what's going on at the state with the state budget?
There have not been.
Because the governor has basically put a hiring freeze, a discretionary funding freeze on, because the state's looking at a $10 to $12 billion deficit over the next 4 years.
Hmm.
So it's gonna cut back a lot on the operational budget, not so much the capital budget, as I understand it, but the operational budget. So, you know, we had a major conference that we were planning that we'll probably end up canceling.
Yeah.
So it's out there. Just kind of wondering if it's starting to ripple through some of the
Hasn't been.
city conversations, or the, Association of Counties.
Yeah, it hasn't been in the ones I've been
Yeah.
looking at so far.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Okay. Any other words of wisdom? Folks? Any thoughts?
Have a great holiday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. You too.
January will be fun.
Just a couple of things listening to you all. The affordable housing issue is not gonna be fixed until there are policies in place to fix it. And that means that legislative bodies are going to have to put their toes in the water, because the market isn't going to fix this problem. The market likes things the way they are. And if we want affordable housing, we're going to have policies that make affordable housing affordable, and that means zoning. And deeds that make affordable housing a thing for 50 years or 100 years. So, and also you're talking about business, our broadband, which we talked about in the 1990s, having broadband here in our community, that's a utility. And now it's not it's luxury anymore. It is a need in any economy, world economy or a local economy. And so if we don't have it here for our citizens you're not gonna have innovation and expansion of business if that's the aim. So I think that's something that should be in the plan too. Having broadband within the communities, so that people can have affordable, consistent and dependable broadband here in our community. If you want business in your community, you're gonna have to have broadband. I don't think there's any way to get around it anymore. So just those two thoughts.
We're still engaged in trying to enhance broadband capacity.
Yeah.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn?
Well,
Is there a
second.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, same name. We're adjourned.
Have a nice holiday, everybody.
Yes.
You too, Charlie.
Oh,
Definitely.